Thank you everyone for being here. Hopefully you can hear us eventually we can hear you. Appreciate everyone being here in person and online. I'm County Commissioner and also City Council Member Heidi Hinkle, chairing for 2024. And then Vice Chair is Council Member Darrell Watson out of Denver. We are going to sort of team lead in 2024. So we're excited to do that together. And him and I have seen each other probably more than we thought we would in January and December. So
it's a good thing.
It's a good thing for sure. So thanks for being here today. What we're going to do is just sort of start off with introductions of people in the room, and then we'll go to online. And then I'll hand it over to Vice Chair Watson to sort of talk about level setting and meeting management and the way that we sort of want to level set for 2024. So I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Councilmember Darrell Watson, Commissioner and Councilmember in Denver. I'm really excited to see everyone.
Morning, Luke Palmisano. I'm a Senior Policy Analyst staffing Denver City Council, here to support Councilmember Watson.
Evan Dreyer, Deputy Chief of Staff in the Mayor's Office in Denver.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Lindsay Milkey, new Chief of Staff for Adams County Manager's Office.
Melinda Stevens, Executive Assistant for Dr. Cog.
Doug Rex, Executive Director, Dr. Cog.
Laura Thomas, Douglas County Commissioner.
Mark Rosen, Staff, Boulder County Commissioner's Office.
Great. And if we can go online, feel free to introduce yourselves.
Everybody, it's Abe Layden from Douglas County. I'm going to my annual physical, so I promised to go on mute, but I didn't want to miss this.
Thank you.
So Happy New Year to all my friends at MACC. I'll be listening in, guys. And also, hey, really quick, I know I promised to go back to my county on minimum wage stuff and do the research. Hopefully, our county sent the memo that we got, but I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Layden.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kerr.
Morning, Andy Kerr, Jefferson County Commissioner, District 2.
Danae.
Good morning, everyone. Danae Brilliard. This is my first MACC meeting, so I'm excited to work with you all. I work with Council Member and Commissioner Hinkle, and excited to support you and Vice Chair Watson with Doug and Melinda at Dr. Cog. So thank you for having us, and I look forward to learning about all the wonderful MACC things that happen. So Happy New Year.
Thanks for being here, Danae, and thanks for all of your support. And we warn you, it's a slippery slope. Let's go to Nellie.
Good morning, all. This is Nellie Stagg. I'm the Transformational Homelessness Response Manager at the Division of Housing. I'm here to support Kristen and Melissa for their presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Rich?
I assume that's me.
Yes, that's you.
The other Rich.
Rich Morrow, Director of Legislative Affairs for Dr. Cog.
Fantastic. Lynn Baca?
Good morning. Happy New Year. Lynn Baca with Adams County.
Great. Thank you for being here. Adam Paul?
Good morning. Adam Paul, Mayor Johnston's Office, Regional Affairs.
Fantastic. Thank you for being here. Kristen Toombs?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kristen Toombs. I'm the Director of the Office of Homeless Initiatives within the state of Colorado's Department of Local Affairs, Division of Housing. Good to be with you all. And you'll be hearing more from me soon about Proposition 123. Looking forward to our time together.
Fantastic. We're going to take copious notes. I hope you know. We're excited.
And don't worry, I'll share slides. So we'll
Great.
share slides after.
Thank you. Council Member Wen?
Hey folks, my name is Kenny Nguyen, recently elected to Broomfield City and County for Ward 1. So I will be the new guy and I'll be the alternative member here. So Heidi's in charge and I'm just here to learn. So thanks for having me.
Glad to have you, Council Member Wen. Sonara Hinton?
Hi, yes, I am Sonora. I'm the new data evaluator for Homeless Solutions for Boulder County Community Services. It's nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Sarah Parody?
Hi, folks. I'm Sarah. I'm an at-large city council member here in Denver, and it's my first time I've made it in, so really happy to be here.
Great, glad to have you with us. And I think the last one is Catherine Smith, if I'm not wrong.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Kathy Smith. I'm the Community Resources Director for Arapahoe County, and I'm here in support of our Board of County Commissioners.
Great, thank you for coming and thanks for having us. Am I missing anyone online?
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Nearson. I am the manager of the Office of Housing Recovery at the Division of Housing under the Department of Local Affairs.
Great, thanks for being here, Melissa. And Heidi Grove, are you online?
I am, Commissioner. How could you forget the other Heidi?
I know.
I mean, all the time we've spent together. I'm Heidi Grove. I am the Homeless Solutions for Boulder County Systems Manager in Boulder County Community Services, and it's great to see you all again. It's been a few months.
Yes, exactly. Thanks for being here, Heidi. Anyone else online? Did I miss anyone?
Commissioner coming in.
We have a commissioner coming in, swooping in. Little do they know, they're gonna have to introduce themselves the second they land. Maybe, maybe not. If not, what we can do is introduce Commissioner Steve O'Dorisio.
Hi, I'm Steve O'Dorisio from Adams County, and I'm happy to be here, and I love seeing all the new faces. This is outstanding.
This is outstanding. Anyone else online? Did we capture that person that came online?
Hi, everyone. This is JEFCO Commissioner Leslie Dahlkemper.
Great, thanks for being here. Fantastic.
Commissioner Baca, too. Commissioner
I think
Baca?
she introduced herself, Lynn Baca. Did I do that? Okay. Great. And in case you haven't noticed, if you're new to these meetings, the theme is assisting those who are unhoused. And so what does that look like as a regional effort? And MACC has decided for the last 2 years to really focus on regional efforts on our people who are unhoused. We have people who are representing their areas who have been unhoused and sleeping in their cars and or grew up unhoused. And we know that this is a major issue that we have regionally. And so this is a topic that we're willing to tackle. Secondly, I'll pass it off to County Commissioner and, well, I guess it was called council member, but also, you know, we work as a city and county, both of us. And so Vice Chair Watson, do you want to take the floor?
Yeah. Quickly, Commissioner, I think, number one, welcome to all of the new commissioners. It's great to see your faces, and I look forward to getting to know you. As you can see, we have quite a few folks. Can you all hear me? Thumbs up, folks. Yep. We have a large, enthusiastic group of commissioners. A lot of folks on virtual, quite a few folks here within the room. One of the things that we wanted to kind of put in place this year, similar to how each of our county commission meetings work, is that for questions, if folks have questions, input, want to just scream out or something, if you're virtual, we're going to come to you first. And we encourage you to raise your hands in the virtual so we can see you and we don't miss you. Because that could be a problem when we have folks that are virtual as well as in person. We can speak amongst ourselves in the room and ignore folks that are virtual. So please raise your hands. Heidi and I will bring you into the room and you can then communicate, share whatever you have. We are also stating, because there's so many folks, lots of opinions, all of us are working on these issues. We're encouraging commissioners to make one comment, one salient, amazing comment, and then get back into the queue. If you have 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, because we know it's all important, but we want to make sure we get around the room. So we're going to test this out today. We'll see how this works. There are no gavels, so we know you all know the rules, and we thank you so much, Scott, for abiding by the rules, and Kerr, both of you are offenders. Thank you for listening and abiding by the rules today, and we do have the power to mute you if you're Commissioner, Well, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And this is just to keep these meetings moving efficiently and equitably. In the last meeting, I felt bad because actually we had a few people online that we missed. And so this is just a way to sort of bring equity into the situation and making sure that everyone has a turn to speak first, and then we'll go to a second round. Apparently Commissioner Kerr has a question already.
We denied Kerr.
Did we deny Kerr? Go ahead, Commissioner Kerr.
Just testing the system.
I knew you were. I was like, oh, I bet Commissioner Kerr is testing the system. It's a slippery slope working with you, but an honorable one at that.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
We have a full agenda today. If there's anyone who wants to add things to the agenda, we will probably have to move that to February. But is everyone okay with the agenda as is? We will be talking about the Medicaid 1115 waiver, Proposition 123, our migrant population and work authorization. You guys were all emailed the language. We will be voting on item number 4 for that work authorization, and we will speak to that a little bit later. And then number 5, hopefully we will get to this, talking about the possible human trafficking legislation. And then we will adjourn at 11 o'clock. We will not go over. So keep that in mind when commenting and discussing items as well. Are there any questions about the agenda at hand? You guys are even better than the high school students I used to have to teach. Thank you for being here again. We have Mark Resin from Boulder County today to sort of introduce Medicaid 1115 waiver. We had talked about this in previous MACC meetings. And so Mr. Resin will speak a little bit to the history on MACC as far as the discussion we've had so far, and then give us an update. So go for it.
Thank you, council member and commissioners, and good to see everyone. Happy New Year. And I'm very thankful to see all of the folks in the room and online. It's really a great way to start the year for MACC. Also want to note that Heidi Grove from Boulder County is here as well with us, and Heidi is going to chip in a little bit on this presentation, which will be brief given the other items on the agenda. The follow-up item to this agenda item is another one of the 2 priorities that MACC identified in 2023 as opportunities to pursue funding and support to advance and continue supportive services for those experiencing homelessness. This is a high priority for MACC. And as Councilmember Henkel mentioned at the front end of the meeting, a focus area. It has been a focus area for MACC for the past 2 years. As a bit of background for those on the call who are new to MACC or just guests today. And so the Medicaid 1115 waiver, along with Prop 123, are 2 strategies that the MACC is interested in pursuing to support their work in this space. Going to provide a short update on the 1115 waiver process. The state is pursuing or has last year through state legislation, House Bill 23-1300, received authority to pursue a Medicaid 1115 waiver for a couple of items that relate to areas that MACC is working on. And the goal here is to open up conversations potentially with the Department of Healthcare, or with the Department of Healthcare Policy and Finance, potentially the state legislature on either expanding the current waiver application, the current waiver that the state's applying for, or potentially pursuing a new waiver. Again, House Bill 23-1300 provided direction to HICPUF in this space. The current amendment proposal is to expand Medicaid services for children 0 to 3 years of age, as well as adults who are leaving a Department of Corrections facility. And then also to provide reentry services for individuals transitioning from correctional facilities, and also to provide services for services in the acute inpatient and or anyone who needs acute inpatient and residential stays in an institute for mental disease for individuals, so technically called an IMD, and who have experienced a serious mental illness or a serious emotional disturbance. So part of the goal here for for the MACC is to look for opportunities to expand that eligibility from Medicaid to apply to those in the support who are receiving supportive services in either the permanent supportive housing space or transitional housing space. As you all know, many of the services that are provided to individuals across the region currently are ARPA funded. We know that in a couple of years, those ARPA funds are going to disappear. And part of the MACC's goal here is to identify sources of funding for beyond 2026. And the Medicaid waiver could be a place that could be a strategy rather, or a tool that could be extremely helpful in that space. In respect to next steps, there's at least a couple of legislators interested in working on this issue. In the 2024 state legislative session, one of our delegation members, Kyle Brown from Louisville, is interested. So Boulder County has been having some conversations with Representative Brown. I mentioned to Councilmember Hinkle that we had a meeting scheduled for yesterday afternoon with Rep. Brown to discuss his ideas in more detail, but unfortunately he had to cancel that meeting. So I don't have as much of an update in that space as I wish I had had. But we know there are some conversations that are happening that are involving both Colorado Coalition for the Homeless as well as Healthier Colorado, and looking at legislation to bring forward in 2024 that would provide the authority to pursue this Medicaid 1115 waiver to apply to the services that MACC is interested in the homelessness space. So I'm going to hand the floor over to Heidi to provide a little bit more detail on what that could look like and why that would be beneficial to all of our communities. And then I think most likely the next step here is to try to keep this on the MACC agenda as kind of a rolling standing item as we hopefully make progress in the weeks and months ahead.
Thanks, Mark. So as Mark just mentioned, we were hoping to have a little bit more details, but unfortunately we had to cancel that meeting. So I think we're looking at rescheduling next week. So hopefully we'll have way more to share this time next month. There's been a lot of activity in the last probably 2.5 months around this and a lot of energy. Oh, okay. So we are working on getting our hands on the draft legislation that CCH and Health Colorado have worked on to make sure that we look at it from an unintended consequences 360 perspective to make sure that our smaller nonprofits have access to these reimbursables. So there's a lot to do between now and probably next month. I have met with HICPOF and did share with them the analysis that I provided the MACC back in November, that about 50% of the activities that we projected with an 1115 would be reimbursable. They concurred with that. So at least we know if we can get an 1115 for these supportive services specifically, that 50% of those activities will be reimbursable by Medicaid, which is better than zero. So a lot more to come in the near future. And I think it's going to be a very busy legislative session. And Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. The question on the floor was, does the MACC want to support these efforts moving forward and let Rep. Brown know that he will have the support of this body? Is that correct?
Yeah, so, and perhaps to wrap up, once we do get once we get some additional information about the legislative effort, ideally, hopefully next week that will happen. As Heidi's alluding to, there may be steps to take between now and the February MACC meeting that support from MACC commissioners could be helpful. We don't necessarily know exactly what those are in the moment, but there may be some steps that could be useful and supportive of the effort and to support Rep. Brown or any other legislator that's thinking of running a bill this session. And the question and thought here is, can we reach out strategically to MACC commissioners once we've identified some steps that perhaps we could use some assistance with. So an example might be if there's a need for a late bill and one of the delegation members within the MACC membership let's say it's an Arapahoe County legislator, needs support with a late bill, perhaps the Arapahoe County commissioners might want to step in and help and support that effort. Or our commissioners certainly can support Rep. Brown. It would be some steps like that we would be asking for support. We don't know exactly what those are just yet, but as we learn more about the legislative effort, hopefully we'll have some opportunities for MACC commissioners to engage in the weeks ahead. And then at the very least, we'll be able to come back at the February meeting and provide an update on where the effort stands.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions online? Comments? We can always come back to you as well. Anyone in the room? Okay. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Mark. We have supported this in the past. Are you guys looking for a vote right now as far as supporting it? Because I think we've supported it in the past. Okay.
I guess if anyone is uncomfortable, perhaps engaging in this space over the next 3 to 4 weeks, either say something now or let us know, email me directly or just we'll reach out through MACC. But otherwise, we'll just keep moving forward, and as opportunities arise to engage with the effort, we'll reach out as needed.
And I would share maybe as a recommendation as far as protocol with MACC, and maybe someone can provide background on that. Have we had a legislative committee within MACC and have a standing kind of legislative item on the agenda? When I say legislative committee, I mean for ideas, opportunities like this that comes forward, to make sure that it is coming through to all members of MACC. We have a set process as to if there is a vote, what the language is, when that comes through, and then kind of a more coordinated process. Has that been kind of protocol for MACC? And if it hasn't, I would recommend we consider doing that. And then also maybe we have a standing agenda on the agenda item on the agenda for legislative actions that MACC commissioners can maybe stream through that legislative committee if it's maybe just it's to Commissioner Henkel and myself, and we make sure that those things are elevated within our discussion on a monthly basis. So first, does anyone know if we had that committee? If we don't, that's fine, but really looking at a protocol for legislative items on the agenda as a regular agenda item, if anyone has a protest of that. Commissioner Henkel, if you had any thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think in the past, just to kind of answer your question, Councilmember Watson, I think in the past we have not weighed in as a legislative body. We try to avoid that as much as possible. And then, we try to only move where necessary. So if we have something like this, we'll only move when necessary. And then the vote would be majority. It's a simple majority here. We try to do more letters of support, and so that's where we kind of land with certain things. We try not to be like a CCI or a lobby type body. And in fact, Representative Lindstedt texted me and he said, "Who's your lobby agency for MACC?" And I was like, us. And so, and mainly because it actually allows us to be a little bit more nimble, and it actually allows us to move in spaces where other people can't. But that's not to say that we can't add something to the agenda, because we have done this for, supporting human trafficking legislation and so on. So I'm actually going to go to Danae first. You were first, and then Commissioner Odoricio is after Danae.
Thank you, Councilmember Hinkle. And I appreciate that question, because that was kind of the question I was going to have of, right, letting Representative Brown know we support in, these conceptual ideas around Medicaid and that work and representing the nonprofits. I heard some of that feedback, I think, is one thing. And the only reason I bring this up is we saw this with another commissioner group last week, where there was confusion of that versus saying we're taking a position on this of support, right? When we don't have a bill, we don't have that. And to your point, Councilmember Hinkle, we're not working in that legislative space in that way. And so clarifying that is helpful. So I appreciated the question and that clarity, because it did jam us up with another commissioner group last week. So I just wanted to make sure we are using consistent language and that we all understood what that meant if we were letting Rep. Brown know that we are in support.
That's great.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Danae. Commissioner Odoricio.
Yeah, let me provide some historical context about this question that came up years ago. A few years ago, CCI was extremely divided itself. And we had Boulder and Broomfield leave at that time, along with Denver just wasn't, I don't know when Denver was a CCI member for a while. Then the question became, and it was the makeup of the board was a little different because Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jeffco were all majority Republican, and then you had Adams and, well, but Boulder had, after Boulder and Broomfield left at CCI, the question was if we want to keep MACC, at least we have something to still stay together on as a metro area, since CCI was splitting up at that point. It was kind of a détente or some sort of kind of compromise to not get into the political stuff that would divide us at that time. Now, and over the past few years, Abe Layden was a big proponent saying, let's make MACC something that still provides us as a collective an elevated level of influence, a lot like Metro mayors. And that means, and he says, I understand we may have to have conversations of things, but as long as we stay away from the stuff that we disagree on and not allow us to get divided. And that's where Eva Henry said, yes, I like that idea too. And collectively, I think we all started kind of over the last year, I'd say this 2 years, last year or two, you've started to see a lot more emphasis put on the potential of metro area county commissioners. So I was just giving you the history of, it's kind of been this, well, we took away all policy and politics at one point as kind of a compromise, but then we've, over the last couple of years, we've started to say, well, we can do it in a way that's not divisive. And if we can find a way to address what I think Daryl's getting at, it could still get to the ultimate goal of us increasing our influence as a collective, as a metro area, because I do think that's a missing voice at the legislature, is that when our legislative friends are making decisions that are taking away or causing some challenges in the metro area for local governments, the fact that we don't have also an equivalent to a metro mayor's taking a stand on certain things is creating some it's putting us at a disadvantage. With that said, I think as long as people just know kind of the history, if we focus on the things that unite us rather than divide us, then I think we will be a stronger board, and we just enter into the fray of some of the policy and politics, just knowing our goal is to still stay united. Because as soon as they know how to divide us, they'll do it, and they've done it in the past. And I say that they, as anyone else that wants to see us divided, not any particular thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Odoricio. We're at the end of this discussion. If there's any further discussion, please feel free to email us. But it sounds like in the past we have supported this, and then in this legislative area, we'll speak when it's necessary. And I think that has a lot of power. And in that space, we'll speak to what our ultimate goal is, and that's supporting our home house population. So thank you all very much for your input and your questions. All right, next up is Proposition 123 funding. And this has been a delayed presentation because we were delayed in November with some sickness from COVID. And so we're excited to hear from Kristen Toombs out of DOLA. If you want to go ahead and get queued up and get started, hopefully you can share your slides, and we would love to hear from you.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. Just let me know if you can't hear me, and I will do some tech on my side. So good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Kristen Toombs with the state of Colorado. I believe I have about 15 minutes, and I have about 15 substantive slides. So I'm going to go fast. There's a lot here. So we will also share a website that we have created called Engage Prop 123. Nellie's going to put that in the chat, and we'll send that out with these slides so that you all can have access to both and can dig in more on Proposition 123, specifically around your area or a particular part of Prop 123 that you have an interest in. Today, I'm going to spend time just high-level overview of what Prop 123 is, specifically honing in on the homelessness program aspect of Prop 123. We are more than happy to come back and dig into any other part of Prop 123 that you would like, but we're going to start today with the homelessness side. Then we'll talk about DOH, or Division of Housing. Call me on it if I use acronyms. Division of Housing strategy around homelessness in general, because that helps inform, as well as the statute for Proposition 123, helps inform our then strategy for Proposition 123 and the funding breakdown that supports that strategy. I'm going to go quickly through it because I want to make sure that I leave time to answer your questions or for you all to provide feedback. We do have a survey that we are encouraging anybody, any stakeholder to complete that survey. It's a great way for us to collect in writing questions, input, et cetera, that folks might have. So again, that will be on that Engage website. Any of you and any of your constituents or any other partners are more than welcome to fill that out. Finally, one more way to get more information beyond our time together this morning is that on the 24th at 3 p.m., we will be holding a feedback forum. It will be virtual, and it will be where we really dig into this. It will be an hour and a half. So as opposed to 10 minutes high level of homelessness strategy around Prop 123, we're really going to be digging into it. We're going to break out groups. It's going to be really exciting. So absolutely welcome any of you, any of your colleagues, partners, constituents to join that as well. All right, and with that, I'm going to keep us moving. So this just says who is involved in Proposition 123. It is not just myself or Division of Housing. We have several folks from Division of Housing and our Division of Local Government, and then also the Office of Economic Development and International Trade and the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority also are managing some of the Proposition 123 funds. So this was approved back last year in November, and it created what's called the State Affordable Housing Fund. The aim is to help create an ongoing dedicated source of funding to help create affordable housing. Again, going to just go real high level. This is probably hard. I apologize for those of you who are physically in the room. This is probably tiny and hard for you to see. Again, I'll send out the slides, I promise. What is key for you to know is this shows the estimated forecast of the amount of money we will get from the 0.1% of Colorado tax revenue that goes into this fund. And again, just a reminder, this year that we're currently in right now, we had half a year's worth of that revenue come to us. That's why you see that it's around 160 million. Starting July 1, that's our fiscal year at the state, we will have the full tax year of that 0.1% revenue coming to the fund, and that's going to be over 311 million. It gets split between OEDIT and Division of Housing, Office of Economic Development and International Trade. So that's what the red is, the OEDIT side, the blue is the DOLA side, the Department of Local Affairs. I'm going to focus today on that, the services for persons experiencing homelessness portion. But as you can see, there are basically 6 different ways that Proposition 123 is being implemented. All right, so here's another way to look at that. So when you look at it from the DOLA side, these are the 3. Again, I said there were 6, 3 at OEDIT, 3 at DOLA. Here I am using the acronyms, but hopefully you got them. And again, we're going to focus on the homelessness one at this point. For this year, we have had to manage, we have about 28.8 million that we've been able to manage this year. At current estimates right now, based on the revenue that we're seeing, is that we will have just over 56 million. Again, that will be starting July 1. All right, so what is going to inform us on how to spend those funds? So we have, for Proposition 123, our strategy and approach, if around how to spend that 56 million for homelessness is based on what the language says in Proposition 123. We do summer roadshows each year where we go around the state, 6 different places plus a virtual, and we have an opportunity to educate, but also then really love that we get feedback from folks. And then the governor has his wildly important priorities, and we have, together with other state agencies, created what's called Making Homelessness History playbook that just lays out some of our strategies around what is effective around helping our unhoused neighbors and helping our communities respond to that. So we take all of that in and we look at how do we create that comprehensive response? What are those proven ways to help a community resolve homelessness? If only we had a silver bullet. This is way too complex. It's not that simple. And so there's usually a continuum, and we're going to go through what that looks like. But you'll see here that when we do that, we want we look at how do we help with any part of that continuum to make sure it's housing focused. That just means, how are we talking with people about how do they resolve their homelessness? Are they getting connected to housing? What does that look like? The data, do we know who's experiencing homelessness? Equity, diversion, inclusion, are we getting to everybody? That's basically what that means. And how do we work together as a community and collaborate? Love it. That's what MACC is all about. You're collaborating regionally. So that's exactly what we're talking about. It's just how do we work together? All right. So what does that look like, right? There isn't one particular solution or model that we look to fund, because we know that it's not just one particular model or program that can solve it for everybody. So we look at it in 3 basic buckets. How do we prevent people from entering into homelessness? That's inflow. How do you stop that inflow? Think of prevention, diversion, etc. Unfortunately, we don't get to everybody there, right? And this is the collective we, right? We know that you all are working hard on this as well, and we are partners with you. But the actively homeless. So how are we doing street outreach, shelter, transitional or temporary housing options? How are we taking care and making sure people are safe and connecting them to the resources that ultimately will lead to outflow, getting them out of homelessness, back into stable housing or the stable care that they need. So that can look like supportive housing, rapid rehousing, affordable housing, family reunification, connection to treatment or inpatient or other skilled facilities if that's needed. So really looking at those 3 buckets. So that's how we look at division of housing at any kind of funding that we have, is how do we help you as communities think about all 3 of these? Let's keep people housed, let's keep safe those who are experiencing homelessness, and let's get them out of that homeless situation as quickly as possible. That's the high level of that. I'm going to keep going, and then we'll pause for questions. So how does those 3 buckets, that continuum, how does that connect or intersect with how we think about Prop 123? So here you go. The first one is prevention and diversion. Melissa Nierensen is here. She introduced herself at the beginning. We've got a lot specifically around prevention that we can speak to. We also have, through our Emergency Solutions Grant annual application process, where we also look at prevention. And so looking at Proposition 123, high level, is we have that annual application process where communities, nonprofits, local governments can apply for some prevention funds there. And we have a special new program that is kind of feeding off of or transitioning from the emergency rental assistance programs that we had throughout the state that are going away with ARPA. Then we have, again, actively homeless. How do we do outreach and inreach? How do we help connect with people experiencing unsheltered homelessness? And how do we help them connect to temporary housing, other treatment, care, supportive services, and ultimately to permanent housing? Also within that actively homeless is, again, as I was just saying, you've got folks in unsheltered homelessness. We'd like to help move them safely inside somewhere to connect to care and stay alive. And so that's how do we help support emergency shelter, transitional housing, bridge housing, those temporary spaces to help engage with someone and get their basic needs met, with the ultimate aim of connecting them again to that stable housing and other support. And then finally, how do we help people exit homelessness? So rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing are 2 examples. Permanent supportive housing is called out specifically in Proposition 123. And I realize I'm using a lot of terms, and all of you might have different understandings of these terms. We do have definitions for these and examples of these that we'd be happy to talk about if you have any questions about what we mean. Basically, high level, very high level, is that it's a way to provide a combination, both of these are a combination of rental assistance so that folks can afford housing, and also the supportive services that come to them to help ensure that they can maintain, get and keep that housing. What you were talking about before about Medicaid and the waiver is connected here with these, right? Around the, how do we help make sure that there are those services in addition to the rental assistance. All right, and then what we have heard loud and clear and what we've seen is that through our various funding sources and engaging and supporting and being partners with community members like yourselves, is that while we're trying to work on these specific buckets and program models, right? How can we help you make more shelters, more supportive housing, outreach that can help connect people to services, et cetera. While you're working on that, there's also just basic capacity challenges, right? How do we work together as systems and not just one program over here and one program over here? How do we really coordinate, collaborate? Well, that takes human bodies, that takes technology, that takes time, that takes data, that takes thought. So how do we help support you to be able to do that systems improvement and capacity building? What we've also seen is some of our communities, our smaller communities, are struggling just to have any kind of, again, capacity to be able to even take advantage of any of the funding. And so how do we help support that? So we're looking at how do we help work with communities around that technical assistance or other kinds of capacity building. And we will dig into that more on the 24th on what are some of those, what would some of those examples be. Part of this, another example I will just highlight quickly here is resource utilization. How do we accelerate the use of vouchers, right? We've got folks walking the streets with housing vouchers. How do we help them? So how do we take advantage of the resources we already have? How do we use them to the fullest ability so that we can help as many people as possible with what we already have? All right, so inflow, active, outflow. Here we go. What does that actually look like from a funding perspective? And again, to those of you in person, apologies, this is small. I promise we'll send this out to you. So what I would highlight so that you don't have to read all of this is the approach side looks like what I just went through. Prevention, diversion, outreach, shelter and temporary housing, rapid rehousing, permanent housing, and systems improvement, right? The next column is the application process. So overall, the key takeaway is that we are not intending, and this is from feedback we've heard from folks, we are not intending to have a Proposition 123 application. What we have heard from folks is that there are a lot of different applications. There's a lot of different, how do you understand the different funding sources? What should I be eligible for or not? We want to take that burden off of our partners. And so we are combining the Proposition 123, adding it to other funding opportunities so that, again, partners can say, I need to create a shelter. I'm going to apply to the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. I need more services. That's how I'm going to apply, et cetera. And that we'll have it there so you don't have to, that applicant, that community does not have to say, am I eligible for this funding or this funding? Am I eligible for prop? We want to take that burden off of you. So that's one thing to look for is that we have our annual Emergency Solutions Grant Program. You see that here on this page a lot because it funds a lot of these activities. Where we have some additional existing programs, existing ways to apply is also on the development side. We have a monthly development application process. That's how you can apply to build any of these approaches that we're talking about. Where we're going to add, and then for supportive housing, we have our annual request for applications for the creation of supportive housing, which we call our PSH RFA, talk about acronyms. And that's really where you can apply if you're wanting to create more supportive housing. We've had that for 10 years in partnership with other parts of Division of Housing and with CHAFA as well. And so what that is, that's the way to apply again for development funds, vouchers, and services for supportive housing. Now so again, there's the ESG NOFA, the monthly development applications, and the PSH RFA. Those already exist. Historically, we've already been combining other funding sources, federal and state, into those. So again, the burden is not on you to figure out what you're eligible for. Instead, you do the hard work of what is it we're trying to create? Let's get us all on board and let's bring that project or that program to fruition. One area that is new that I mentioned before, and we've had Melissa here if folks have questions, will be the Colorado Rental Stability Program, or CRISP, C-R-S-P. And that is, again, that the new version, the new generation of ERA in short. And so what we've heard loud and clear is that those hundreds of millions of dollars that we received for prevention was so key to keep many Coloradans stably housed. And with that going away from ARPA, that we need to have something there. And while this is not the hundreds of millions, because as you saw before, that would be literally all of Proposition 123, it is a significant portion of the homeless programs fund part. So one other point I'll add, and then I'll stop and happy to answer questions, is We have not set specific funding amounts besides the CRISP program to each of these. We have buckets that we have created that you can see on that column on the fiscal year allocation. So what we have is that this year we funded 8.5 of the Prop 123, 8.5 million of the Prop 123 funds to the through the ESG program. So think again, shelters, outreach, prevention, diversion, rapid rehousing. Where right now that's what we have budgeted for the next year. New to the next year will be the CRISP NOFA. So that's where we will have additional funds for prevention. On the development side, we have about 15 million of the Prop 123 bucketed for developing PSH and 2.5 million for what we call tenancy support services. And then about 5 million for the systems improvement. So you can see that here. Again, we'll send this out so you can see those. We have not, besides the 8.5, we did not go granular to say of the 8.5, how much goes to street outreach, how much goes to emergency shelter, because frankly, we want to leave it flexible for what we hear from you all, from what applications we see coming in. As we know, this is a dynamic need, and so we want to stay flexible to what you all bring forth and request. So this will be shared in more detail on the 24th. The survey we also have as well that we are looking for folks to be able to provide input there as well. But I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that this was a pretty quick run through. And I can't see you all while I'm sharing, so feel free to just yell at me.
Thank you, Kristen, so much for your in-depth presentation. It was very effective and also just really directed us to what our final landing spot is with MACC. We do have some questions and comments. Catherine, we'll go to you first.
Thank you. Hey, Kristen, can you tell me what the NOFA timeframe will be on the CRISP and then remind of the ESG NOFA timeframe also?
Absolutely. Thanks, Kathy. So Melissa, I'm going to go to you for CRISP, but I can share for ESG. And we're probably going to change that name because we've gotten feedback that it's confusing. Folks think of it as just the ESG funds. And so we're going to try and come up with a creative name for it so that it's not just, if there's no confusion that it's just ESG funds. So if anybody has any great ideas, you can get a prize or something for saying you came up with the name. So that one usually comes out in August each year, about mid-August, sometimes through mid-September is when we have it. And then the program year for that, so we get the applications by the time the awards are made and the grants and are executed, the agreements are executed, the program year for those funds is then April 1st through March 31st each year. We've been able to do some exceptions as needed, but that's typically the timeline we do. And we usually have about, with this level of funding, this year we have 99 grants that we're doing throughout the state. And then Melissa, CRISP?
Yeah, great. Thank you. So the CRISP program NOFA, I don't have a great answer on when we're going to be releasing that, other than it's likely going to be at some point between March and May of this year. So we're actually waiting to see how the rollout of a different rental assistance program goes that we are rolling out as we speak. We're funding that was awarded during this last special session back in November. And seeing how quickly those funds go, that will help inform when we release the CRISP NOFA. So if you are not subscribed to the Division of Housing updates, I will put in the chat how to do that, but that is how we will communicate that NOFA is available. And that is also how Kristen communicates a lot of her NOFAs as well.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Kristen, if you want to stop sharing your slides, we can start seeing a little bit more people and have a dialogue about this. We have about 10 minutes allotted to this subject, and so I know that it could go on and on and on. But I also think that it's important to understand, exactly timelines and who's involved. And as a person who works in the nonprofit industry in my other full-time job, getting a federal grant is not very easy to work with, and it can be very complicated. So I appreciate the accessibility that you've had here. I believe, Danae, you had a question. I saw your hand up. Is it still up? Maybe you put it down. Okay. Is there anyone else online that has a question or comment? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in the room? I'm also seeing a lot of things in the chat. I just want to ask if Dr. Cog could just make sure we're capturing everything in the chat, because I'm looking at it going, I want to look that up and I want to look that up. And I think it'd be important to put in our minutes as well. So yeah. Do you have a question?
And I will send a follow-up email, and I can include those links as well with the slides. So there'll be many ways to make sure that you get the information. And then, of course, if anybody has challenges with the links or needs additional information, just reach out.
Great, thank you so much. There has been some talk, I'll just kind of take the floor a little bit. There has been some talk about certain counties saying, hey, this is not even worth applying for because it's going to actually cost us locally more money than it's worth to apply for this funding. What are your thoughts on that? Or, you know, how are you guys reading the room as far as who's going to apply and what they're going to apply for? Have you had any sort of meter testing in the area?
And is that Councilmember Hinkle?
Councilmember Hinkle, sorry.
Yes, no, it's okay. I have so many, you've become very small. So I just wanted to make sure I knew who was asking that wonderful
I've already
question.
started at 5'3", so.
So thank you for that question. That actually brings up a key point that I did not share that you all should know, which is, I think what you're talking about with the Proposition 1, 2, 3 and applying. So if your community has, you have to opt in to say as a community, we're going to try to build more affordable housing. And there's a whole nother conversation we can have about how you have to increase that by 3%. Can you all hear me? You all went quiet. I want to make sure.
Yeah,
okay, great. Okay, great. And that is your way by, as a local government, making a commitment to increase affordable housing. You can then access all the 5 other programs we did not talk about today. So building and the equity and the rental, all of that. Local government has to say, yep, we're signing up. The exception is any of the programming side of homelessness. So any nonprofit, regardless of where you're at as a local community, as a local government in the commitment. And again, by us putting it annually into the ESG NOFA, you just apply there like you would any other year. And the nonprofits know about that annual. If any of them don't, please let me know. We want to make sure they get the word. Now, it's not a lot of money. That's our biggest challenge, I think, is what you're speaking to, is there's not enough there. But again, that's why we add to it the HUD funds for ESG and other funds where we can, so that we can try to make that one-time application and as big of a pot of money as possible to make it as efficient, easy, and worthwhile for nonprofits to say, yeah, I'm going to apply to see if I can get that extra outreach worker. I'm going to apply to see if I can get the shelter. Unfortunately, this is not enough funds to truly fund the need that we see throughout the state, right? This will not fund all street outreach programs or all shelters. We would need a lot more money to be able to do that. But we're trying to make it as easy as possible for folks. If you hear other things or anyone on ways that we can make it even easier for folks, we are all ears. We want to make this where it's worth it for folks to just throw their hat in the ring as thoughtfully and easily as possible.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Really appreciate that answer, and it's very clear. You could be a high school teacher too. That's also a very slippery slope. Question for you, and how this sort of intertwines with Medicaid 1115. If we don't have that, how does that intersect with your work?
Oh, again, I love this question. You all are great. That is an interesting one, right? You saw how we are looking at how to spend the 58 million. Basically, what we would need to look at is taking from any of these other buckets that we've created beyond the 2.5 million that we are planning to award for permanent supportive housing. That 2.5 million is, in our mind right now, the way we're thinking about it is to prioritize it for new supportive housing so that we can keep the pipeline going, since those projects will die on the vine or be dead upon arrival, whatever analogy you want to use, if they don't have services funding from a financing perspective. They won't get vouchers, they won't get gap funding, they won't get tax credits. So we need to make sure that pipeline is surviving and keeps going. There's a lot of work that's been put into those. What does that then mean for existing supportive housing projects? That's where we have a current pilot program that we're doing right now in partnership with healthcare policy and financing, where we are working hard to help those supportive housing partners get signed up and credentialed for Medicaid so that they have the ability to get in there, because whether this waiver happens or not, that's what they're all going to need to do. And then also helping think through for each budget, what do you need? How can you access Medicaid now in the normal world that it is right now? And really trying to help problem solve how to keep those functioning. If there seems to be, if this all just falls apart and there is no Medicaid after this SWISHY, and the SWISHY pilot is the ARPA funding that HCPF has been using. If there is, turns out to be a gap, that's a conversation I think we need to have, is where does Proposition 123 fit in? Knowing, however, that this will be a robbing Peter to pay Paul tough conversation, that if you all have committed as a community to creating more affordable housing units, more supportive housing units, we might have to be taking away the funds from that to pay for the services. It's going to be a tough conversation, I think, just because there's not enough money to go around. But I think that's what I would say immediately about where we're at with that. And so really appreciate that you all are being so thoughtful about what happens post SWISHY with Medicaid.
Definitely, yeah, we're having that conversation in Broomfield as well. Just sort of talking, we just talked about down payment assistance, mortgage assistance, and then is that money going to be taken away from other programs? And I just think it's a balancing act, but where we can advocate as a MACC group is for that waiver, and so I think we'll continue to do that work. I have just one more quick question for you. When people apply for the HUD, applications, and they're applying for the state applications through Prop 123, where are the requirements? Are you guys separating those funds as far as responsibility goes? Because federal is different than state, obviously, in funding. And where are they reporting them separately? I'm just curious.
That's a great question. So from a reporting perspective, we are incorporating, I had a slide on this, but took it out for the sake of time. We really rely on helping communities and programs use the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS. And that's what some of that capacity building funding can be too, is to help folks make sure that they can use that. Just to put in the bare minimum requirements for reporting, so that regardless of what funding source you have, we have a consistent way that you know what you're reporting, and keeping that as minimal to the key data points that we need, regardless of the funding source. From a requirements, eligible activities perspective, what we did in this last round of the ESG NOFA was looked at feedback we got from folks on what were the pain points of the ESG requirements, the HUD requirements for ESG, and where could we create some flexibility. I would love to dig into that more in the coming months with partners, because I think we still have some room to go on getting nuanced on that, and how do we help. What we don't want to do is penalize arbitrary, feel like we're penalizing or creating challenges or barriers. We want to be very strategic about who can do more of the HUD requirements and for those who can't. So would love to hear more from folks, and maybe that's a follow-up to this, is sitting down with some folks and digging in. I think we have a good start to it, but I think there's more that we could do around that.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your time today. And I do want to reiterate what you said about sort of the stakeholder input on the 24th at 3 p.m. and make sure that we have the invite sent out to, even our constituents and those stakeholders and nonprofits. I think that's going to be very important. So thank you so much for your time today. And you're more than welcome to stay on. We're going to be talking about work authorization. It's an exciting topic. We are moving into an era where we have a lot of migrants coming in. And so that's a separate subject. But thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate all of your work and making this a priority. Really appreciate it. It's an important issue for our communities and our neighbors. So appreciate you all. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you. Great. Next item up is item number 4, our migrant population work authorization. Myself and Vice Chair Watson and his staff will address this. We've had obviously an influx of migrants into Colorado. We've always had migrant influx and we've always had immigrant influx. And this is sort of what I do for a living in my nonprofit area. I help resettle refugees, Ukrainian and Afghan refugees. Typically in the past, just so you guys know how immigration works, I'll give you the 1-minute spiel for it. Usually you come over either on a special immigrant visa or recently we've had a lot of temporary protected status. And so what that entails is, for instance, out of Kabul, Afghanistan, the fall of Kabul, Afghanistan caused a lot of panic and things like that. And they had to come over without special immigrant visas. And so we had to evacuate a lot of our allies out of there. My husband's interpreter was one of them, for instance. And so we had thousands come over. And the typical process is, you know, they come over and they go to a refugee camp and they have eye scans, they take your blood, those sorts of things. It's pretty intensive. They came over under temporary protected status. Then we had the Ukrainian issue in the war. And so we're in a world of war right now, in a world of conflict. And so our laws are constantly changing. I can't even keep up with the laws, honestly. I have to ask various immigration lawyers on which law do we have now. Because when it came to Ukrainians, for instance, we had a Ukrainian family in Broomfield that came over almost too early before the temporary protected status worked. And then they had to change the date of those people who came over quickly. And so we're working with dates, we're working with federal immigration law. We're also working with different things, you know, like asylum cases that are now going to take 5 years because our State Department was not prepared, A, for the Afghan evacuation. They were not prepared for the Ukrainian, influx. And then they were not prepared, for what's happening in Venezuela, where people are not safe and they're seeking asylum here. Now, there's different ways that people can seek asylum. They can also go through, CBP app, and they can also go through other areas to apply for a court hearing. And so a lot of our immigrants in Broomfield, we have a lot of our Catholic leaders actually are housing immigrants or migrants in Broomfield. So we actually have not only people in Denver, but we also have people in Broomfield too. So this affects a lot of your areas, whether or not you know it. Not a lot of people speak about it. And so we do have housing in Broomfield for homes that people bring the migrant families into. And we have a welcome program that a lot of our families use. It's sort of a national program that we started with the Ukrainians, and now they're extending it to the Venezuelans, Haitians, Cubans, and so on. The difference is, and I'll tell you this much, is that the Afghans and our Ukrainians are ORR eligible, meaning they can receive financial assistance from our resettlement agencies. People from Cuba, Haitians, and also our Venezuelans are not ORR eligible. So they come here with literally no money and no assistance whatsoever. So our Afghans, Ukrainians, they get a certain amount of dollars per month. It's a grant funding program that they have. But with our Venezuelans, they are not ORR eligible. So sort of tee that off. A lot of people do have court dates and they're waiting for those court dates. The issue is that they cannot work and we're not allowing them to work while they wait for their court dates. So I'm going to sort of hand it off to Councilmember Watson and Commissioner Watson, and then we'll circle back to the language in this proposed interim resolution that actually Commissioner Stolzman started. It's talking about expediting work authorization while they're waiting for their court hearings. So take it away.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And I think this is an important topic. And to speak specifically to the role Denver County has been playing, I mean, we have Evan Dreyer, Deputy Chief of Staff for Mayor Johnston, and also Mayor Adam Paul. Both have been doing some great work. So we have a presentation. I'm wondering if the team from DRCOG is going to share the presentation. Yes, please, if you don't mind sharing, and then I'll turn it over to you, Evan Dreyer, to kick it off, and then Mayor Paul to join in as necessary. And thank you, Commissioner Henkel, for putting kind of the architecture and the explanation as to the difference between the asylum seekers from different parts of the world and really why we are seeing the work authorization as being a great solution. And that will be a part of the ask of the commissioners. So I'm stalling. I may start singing and dancing if I need to as we are pulling up the presentation. So,
right.
Evan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Commissioner Watson. And that was a great introduction, I think, in terms of 101, how immigration law and practice has typically worked. That was really among the most succinct and clear descriptions that I've heard in a very long time, because it is very confusing. We have had, like you said, we've had immigration pipelines to and through Denver forever. There are a couple of commercial bus lines that, I guess I should introduce myself. Evan Dreyer, Deputy Chief of Staff to Mayor Johnson. We have a couple of commercial bus lines that have operated for decades or even generations in Denver, between Denver and El Paso. And so there are constantly people moving back and forth between Denver and the border. In the summer of 2022, we started to see a slight increase. And we were being forewarned by NGOs and CBOs and even the federal government on the border that those numbers were going to increase. And in December of 2022, they did. That was really the beginning of the first of 4 big waves that we've experienced over the past year plus now. Since December of 2022, we have seen about 38,000 people come to and through the city. And I think to the commissioner's point, they're in every community in Colorado. And we may not be talking about it, it may not be very visible, but they are in your communities. Not in the numbers that they are in Denver, because we are the hub of where folks are coming in, but they are all over. I think a month or so ago, Carbondale was in the news. There were a few dozen folks that were living under a bridge, even as cold as it is up in the mountains. We currently have about 4,500 people in 9 different facilities, 9 shelters. 7 of those facilities are hotels that we are utilizing as shelters. We work primarily with one hotel operator who has facilities up and down the Front Range. And then 2 of the 9 are congregate shelters. One of them is a church gymnasium that we are in the process of buying. So we're in a lease to buy situation with that church right now. And then the other one is a municipal building, the McNichol Civic Center building, which is right downtown, right across from City Hall and from the Webb Municipal Building. We're utilizing both of those as congregate shelters. Over the course of the last year, we've hired about 500 contractor or on-call workers to staff those facilities. It is quite a lift to try to keep that many people in shelters. I mentioned that we have there's probably 2 commercial bus lines that operate normally and have for decades. There's also Greyhound, but a new dynamic that started for us and for other cities around the country is that the state of Texas is chartering buses and sending them directly to cities around the country. Denver is one of the top destinations, one of the top recipients of these buses. More than 300 of the charter buses have come to Denver since June of 2023. And then in December alone, the number was off the charts, 144 buses. Things have slowed a little bit in January. I think attributable in large part to the weather. Because the weather here over the last week to 10 days has been extremely cold. It's also not been great in Texas. And so I think out of an abundance of caution and safety for their bus drivers, they've sort of hit pause. There are some other things that are happening along the border that would indicate there's a little bit of a slowdown. We're having a lot of talk in Washington right now about increased border security and a deal for funding tied to funding for Ukraine and funding for Israel as well. That may be having an impact. Mexico also, I think, over the holidays, probably relaxed a bunch of border security efforts in that country, which may have had an impact on crossings at the border as well. So, but obviously now we're past the holidays, and that may be favored as well. So there's probably a few different reasons for why we've experienced a little bit of this year. But everything that we're being told is expect the high levels of new arrivals that we experienced in December to continue for the foreseeable future. We, in July, when Councilman Watson, Mayor Johnston took office, we were in a very low period, and this has ebbed and flowed all year. There were between 400 and 500 people in just 2 or 3 shelters, and now we're at 4,500 in 9 shelters. We were receiving, on average, 200 to 300 people a day coming in. It all comes at a high cost. We're projecting that we will close this year, or last year, sorry, 2023, with about total expenses approaching 50 million, probably between 45 and 50 million dollars. This year, in 2024, if the current level of sheltering stays where it is, 4,500 people, we are projecting it could cost as much as $180 million. We did not budget $180 million. So we are talking to the city agencies about ways to tighten belts and tuck and trim. And we will be coming back to city council, I think, with the revised plan for the 2024 budget. If this level of need stays as high as it is. It's particularly difficult in the winter. It's one thing, I think, to say we are not going to serve any more than X number of people, but that typically will mean then you're turning people away. And I think we all have a difficult time contemplating turning people away when it's 0 or below 0 degrees out. So that's sort of the humanitarian dilemma that we find ourselves in with this. I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Paul. He was just in Washington with Mayor Johnson this week. They just got back yesterday. And they've been lobbying extremely hard. Mayor's been lobbying really hard for a few different things. And I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Paul to talk about the last couple of days in DC.
Great. Thank you, Evan and Commissioner Watson. And Evan are going to get me in trouble by continuing to call me mayor. So I thank you for that.
Favorite mayor.
And I also want to thank Commissioners Stoltzman, Hinkle, and Pinter, because we did start this conversation with the resolution that's before the board. And I know our mayor is in support moving forward, but had a whirlwind trip for the mayor's first U.S. Conference of Mayors and really focused a lot on this issue with our delegation, with other mayors, and even a one-on-one meeting with the mayor of Chicago and Secretary Mayorkas yesterday. So you may have seen some of the press, but really continuing to push for a resolution that includes money, work permits, expedited work permits, as well as a coordinated entry plan. And we are trying to take advantage of some of our own, I think, innovation that the mayor has in saying if the federal government can't and won't be able to function with a coordinated entry program, we presented to a group of mayors our own idea in that trying to get like cities that are willing to engage and welcome newcomers to their communities to look at a forward program that would bring a playbook of best practices that Denver has learned, assistance with housing, with work authorization, and nonprofit and faith-based support in those landing communities, as well as a potential stipend from the city and county of Denver to help move those folks on into a successful situation. Early models is that we need total population of around 20 million to really make this pro rata approach work. So in that type of model, where Denver may see 200 to 250 arrivals a day, if we had a coordinated entry plan with other cities, we'd see that go down to about 50 a week would be our pro rata share. So had some initial calls last week, had a meeting of many mayors yesterday. This is front and center for so many different communities and a lot of communities that want to be of assistance and want to help. Work authorization is the key linchpin. It's hard to send people on when they're not able to work. So the mayor's team and Evan are working diligently on all kinds of different ideas and solutions to see if there's things that we can move forward. So We'll continue to engage. Metro Mayor's Caucus has a sign-on letter that is going to go through the executive committee today, urging the federal delegation to continue. Senator Bennett and Hickenlooper are very engaged, as well as most of our delegation. Something has to be done. We are absolutely at a breaking point. I appreciate folks on this call that have been really engaged in trying to help. Most recently, our Jefferson County friends. And at the Wheat Ridge level, these are tough conversations. And as soon as there was any conversation about the city looking at a opportunity in Wheat Ridge, there was a group of 150, 200 people that had a community meeting to coalesce around not allowing something like this to happen. So politically, we understand this is not the most convenient, but humanitarian wise, we are really, really running out of options. So you'll see on this slide, Evan's last kind of bullet points there. Anything that can help our delegation, fast track work authorization. You know, we've been promised around, I think Evan is at 40 to, well, we've spent 40 to 45 million. We've been promised 9 million in rebates or refunding from the federal government. We've seen about 900,000. Continued family support, hosting families, faith-based engagement, which we are also trying to build as we look at this playbook, and then consideration of real estate or other facilities that you might have in your community. So that I think is a good summary, and happy to take any questions that anybody might have.
Great, thank you, Mayor Paul. I will also still call you Mayor Paul. So once a mayor, always a mayor, and I appreciate your efforts. I am in a lot of the Facebook groups, and my volunteers out of Broomfield are constantly bringing down warm clothes, luggages. They need luggage with wheels. They will not be let into certain places without that. And so we need to make sure that we're supporting them in a humanitarian way. And a lot of our churches have come forward, and their leaders are having them in their homes. And there are certain U.S.-led programs as well called Welcome.us as a program that we use in Broomfield. And so it's a good program to sort of let people know that they can hook up with a family and host them in their home temporarily. We'll add one more data point to this too. I want everyone to know that when people are fleeing places like, or Venezuela in particular, we're seeing 10% of that population. So we're not actually seeing the entire population. They're actually going to the Bahamas, they're going to other countries. So I want everyone to be very clear in understanding what kind of numbers we're actually looking at. They are a large number for us. I do want you to know that 90% of those fleeing Venezuela are not in the U.S. right now. So I'll go first to Commissioner Layden, and then I'll go to Commissioner Dahlkemper after that. Thank you. Commissioner Layden.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the conversation and the engagement, and I want to compliment and express my gratitude to Adam and Mayor Johnston and the Denver team, and my friend and colleague, Daryl. I think your leadership is really significant, and as I've said many times in the past, your success is our success in the metro area. But I'm going to restate the same analogy that I've shared in the past. Y'all, we're in a bathroom with a bathtub, and the faucet is on full blast. And now the water is overflowing over the bathtub, and it's filling the entire bathroom area. And we're saying, hey, we need money for towels. We've got to find a way to sop up this moisture. It's leaking. It's going to get throughout the entire house. We have got to turn off the faucet. Bottom line, it is just the most common sense thing. Yeah, for those that are here that don't have a way back out, we have to be compassionate, humanitarian. But until we turn off that faucet and stop inviting people to a cold weather climate without the resources to support them, we will continue to face this issue. Douglas County has taken a strong stance on this. We are working with our federal lobbyists and with Congress to make sure that we have strict immigration enforcement and that we're being thoughtful around the legality associated with people coming here. Again, if we had a plan and had the resources to take everybody that wanted to be here, great. We don't. That $180 million is a staggering number. And again, I think until we turn that faucet off in the bathtub, this is a real challenge for the Denver administration. But we want to be here to help. And let me just end on a high note that I fully support. I know Commissioner Thomas is in the room. I don't want to get ahead of our board, but in terms of support for work authorization, that's a great bipartisan solution, reducing those barriers to work. I would want to say that we would be fully with you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lane. Thank you for your words and support. Commissioner Dahlkemper?
Great, thank you so much. And you will always be Mayor Paul to me, no question about it. Adam, thank you so much for your work. Evan, great to hear from you as well. We also appreciate everything Mayor Johnston is doing to lead both locally and nationally with other mayors on this issue. You talked a bit about the coordinated entry plan. Can you talk more about what potentially that could look like? Do we know enough at this point to share more on that front?
Yeah, thank you for that. And a little bit. So basically what we would try to do is pilot, and we were looking at the month of February, taking a certain amount, let's say 5,000 arrivals that come through our city. And based upon other communities throughout the rest of the country, with these relationships that we're building, we take that total population of all of the cities and break that down and do like the pro rata share. So in that one model that I shared of 20 million residents in all these cities, Denver's pro rata share is around 45 to 50 newcomers per week. And so the idea is then we work with forward transportation. We work with a receiving community that then takes advantage of faith-based and nonprofit organizations that we've helped connect, as well as our playbook again on how we've helped house people in more permanent settings. The job authorization piece, if we can send on folks that are eligible to work or close to eligible to work, that's going to be critically important. And then that stipend that's going to help ensure that there is some success, whether that's a first or last month's rent, something along those lines. And so that in concept is what we have, Commissioner. Now, as you can imagine, making, how does all of this work? And again, we keep going back to work. And Commissioner Lane, I appreciate your federal lobbyists. We really need both sides to come together on this situation, especially as it relates to work, to get this done and get this through, because we know in our experience, all people want to do is work. It's a much different population than our unhoused, our chronic unhoused, right, that have, situations that are much different. So we know that if we can get the majority of these folks to work, they're going to be set up for success. And that's what they want. And so that is the idea. And we had about 40 to 50 mayors that we've engaged with in the preliminary conversations, and in secondary ones we're at about 20 to 30 cities throughout. And some cities that really, are seeing they need people to work, they need population. And so they're really willing to engage in this conversation.
Great, thank you so much. Do you have any follow-up questions with that, Commissioner Dahlkemper?
No, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Any questions, comments in the room?
I appreciate what you guys are doing. I think that there's an opportunity here to try to. I signed up last week and I did the training for an immigrant clinic because I'm an attorney. I'm looking forward to learning more as I go through the process of getting involved in that area. But what you guys are doing, Mayor Paul, thank you, and team. It is a difficult situation. I do think that messaging does help, though, with the spigot that Commissioner Layden was talking about, and I think it's a delicate balance. You want to show that you do have compassion, but you don't. I use the analogy: if somebody leaves a baby on my doorstep, I'm not going to close the door and say not my job, but I'm also not going to put a sign out front on the front door on the front lawn saying bring all babies here. And that's the hard thing that we're having to try to address. And I don't think that, I think when the message gets out, especially to folks in Texas, when you guys lift the caps on stays, nights and stays like that, that it only turned the spigot on more. And it's hard because you want to be able to be transparent in explaining the humanitarian effort, but it also does create an additional flow. And I think it's hard. What I'm saying is I have empathy and sympathy for the challenge of the balance that you're going through. I appreciate it more than we say. I just think that we also need to just continue to be cautious with how those messages get out. But I can say, regardless, I think we can, as a MAC, sidestep the political discussion on sanctuary city, non-sanctuary city. And we as a MAC can and should unite around some of those things that you're asking. Can we, as a team, push our federal delegation for some help? Can we, as a team, push for more assistance? Are there things we can do to welcome people who want to be hardworking, rule-following, tax-paying Americans, get them to that outcome quickly? And those are things that I think the MAC can do that sidestep the divisive politics.
There's a draft letter that the Metro Mayor's Caucus is, I think, near final on, Mayor Paul, that we could share with you all if you wanted to model something after that, if you're interested, willing, able to do a similar kind of letter to the delegation, sidestepping the politics, but really trying to encourage solutions of what we've been talking about. That would be great. On the messaging piece, we are trying to message, we are messaging to the border through government agencies, through the community-based organizations, that we are full, it is cold, and we're out of money. So don't come.
And I've actually seen one of those flyers that you guys have sent out. I'm not sure we publish that internally much, but I have seen that. I do know you guys are trying. But when it comes to that letter, if we could look at that letter, I believe that we can address through our messaging what Commissioner Layton's talking about, while also recognizing the humanitarian piece and asking for the feds to start addressing this issue in a more effective and efficient manner.
As soon as that letter is final, we'll get it.
Great, thank you. Yes, and we're under time constraints here. We have a couple more minutes left. In Broomfield, I have submitted to our council to discuss this in our focus session and how we can partner with Denver and move forward programs through the private sector and our nonprofits and nationwide programs, because I do think it's important. The votes that we will be taking, or the vote that we'll be taking today, is just on this proposed policy that Commissioner Stolzman and I are going to take we both serve on the Immigration Task Force through NACO. And we're going to have some heated discussions, I think, this year. We're doing it at 8 a.m. on a Sunday, maybe. And so we're going to be talking about this policy, but I do think it's something, a place where people can come together. So the policy states that the National Association of Counties urges Congress and the administration to take actions to shorten the current waiting period for asylum seekers who are applying for EAD. That's like work authorization. By shortening the arbitrary waiting period, asylum seekers will be able to contribute more quickly to the workforce and local economy and reduce the need for them to rely on supportive services from counties. And this applies to anyone who's actually applying for workforce authorization. And I do want to kind of go reverse a little bit too. Some people who came here from Afghanistan, even on our planes, actually should not have come too. So we do have some people in America who should not be here, and they come from all different countries. So I just want to equate that to all different countries. And so we have to weed through those people and figure that part out. So that sort of politics aside, I do think that work authorization is something that we can all agree on. I believe when we've taken a vote before, we just ask everyone, all in support, say yay.
Do we need a motion?
Do we need a motion?
I think we should.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to?
So moved, I move.
Is there a second?
Just to clarify the motion, I think that what you're moving to is that we will look at the letter draft, send it out to the, okay, and then provide comments. And if we don't get comments by a certain period of time, that we could send it out. Is that okay?
I think we're supporting it to bring it to NACO in February. I don't know if we'll have enough time.
That's easy. I'm just saying, like, we could also send it from us to all of our delegates.
Yeah, so the motion is for this to go to NACO, and then the encouragement beyond the motion on this vote is for us to take it to our delegation as well. Because I think this language has been presented to the commissioners, so.
Yeah, that sound good? Do we have a second?
I'm okay with it. Second.
Is that the long version?
That's the long version of the second.
I'm okay with it. Great. Is there a vote? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anyone against?
I'm going to abstain until my board can.
Thank you very much. That passes.
Do we have a count? So all commissioners are on the call. We have only one abstention. Everyone else was aye. If there's anyone else voting nay, we need to have a clear count. And we'll count you as a aye if we don't see otherwise.
Yeah, Jeffco, we're gonna have to abstain because we haven't discussed this as a board, but certainly don't put us down as a no, but we will have to abstain as well.
Here's a question, because I think my board would appreciate, given the fact that how sensitive this was with us. I think we all agree with the general premise behind it, but I think if we could give ourselves a week to just run it by our respective boards, that might help us all make sure that rather than have a bunch of abstentions and have it look like we're not united, let's get some feedback in the week or so on this. Is that okay? Put a deadline on it?
Okay, so a deadline by next Friday?
So I pulled my motion.
Okay. Or say it's pending. Pending, the motion pending, approval pending consensus.
A day certain, which would be next.
We won't have an official action on that
Yeah.
day, but you could say that, shall we agree today to move forward with whoever agrees within the next week to be added to?
Yeah.
How's that?
That sounds perfect.
That allows all those organizations, because my group will want to see this just to double check too.
Correct.
Okay, so staff-wise, are we following up with everyone next Friday? Is that?
We can do that.
Can we make sure we send this out to everyone as well? I think, I know we've seen it. It is work authorization information, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the calendar invite, but we can send it out in addition to. Madam Chair, just so I'm clear about what we're asking, so we'll send out a quick email to the commissioners requesting what specifically. I'm looking at Commissioner Rodriguez.
I'm thinking that we submit, are you guys okay with this? Can you get approval from your respective bodies and let us know who supports participating or adding their name to the participating in the delivery of this as a MACC? And if we have a majority of the MACC participants, and we'll say it's MACC, and if we don't get the majority of the MACC participants to participate, then it's going to be individuals.
Yeah.
It'll be individual jurisdictions to submit on their, as a collective on their own outside of MACC. How's that?
By next Friday.
So
Say next Friday by noon.
each individual county won't sign on to it, so it's clear who signed on to it and who didn't. We'll just say MACC.
It can say MACC if you get majority of the MACC.
We get
votes to
majority,
agree.
we can say
And if it looks like that there's gonna be some sort of negativity or divisiveness, we could just
We'll just
say,
do it.
we just do it as individual organizations. I think the goal is to identify what I've heard is, this is the kind of thing that we can unite around, because it's about how to help pushing the federal delegation to help us with this issue. Both, I agree with addressing some of the other issues that we could address, but also this specifically deals with the workforce issue, which helps not only the flow issue, like Madam Driver was mentioning, it also helps us like address some needs that we have here. There are a lot of folks out there in Colorado that want to be hiring new people, that want to, and so it kind of hits all those cylinders, unless I hear from someone else saying that this is also divisive, which I think we need to hear. If there is, speak up, let us hear it.
Well, and I think too, we just need to make sure it's clear. It's just this one particular policy. We
Yes.
aren't extending it beyond that. So we're not talking about border policy. We're talking about work authorization and advocating for expediency. It's work authorization that they would get anyway. It's just we're really pushing for expediency and getting work authorizations. All right. I think that's it. We ran out of time. Next time we will discuss item number 5. And if there are any other agenda items that people wish to add to the next agenda, please let us know. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thanks.